In today's video, I'm going to fulfill a fairly frequent request I've had over the last few years here, and I'm going to do so as a tribute to who I think was one of the greatest men literally of our generation and passed away just a couple of weeks ago. I'm talking about, of course, Chuck Norris. Over the last few years, I've tried to include a Chuck Norris fact in most of my videos because I think they're funny, and I also think I think Chuck Norris is a really cool guy. So today's video is going to be kind of a compilation of Chuck Norris facts. Maybe even got a couple of new ones you haven't heard yet. And we're going to kind of spread out through there. There's going to be a little bit of a tribute to Chuck Norris. I'll tell you a couple of things from my personal life of how Chuck Norris impacted me, how Chuck Norris is at least partially responsible for my marriage and the time that I actually met Chuck Norris. So we're going to do that coming up next here on Survival on Purpose.
The Tooth Fairy put her teeth under Chuck Norris's pillow.
Welcome back to Survival on Purpose. My name's Brian. Thanks for joining me for today's video, which honestly, I wish I wasn't making. I got to tell you, when I heard the news a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday morning that Chuck Norris had passed away, it really hit me a lot harder than I would expect somebody who I only met one time, a celebrity, to hit me. They're passing away, but for some reason it did. I think Chuck Norris, literally, I think he was one of the greatest men of our generation. I say that with all sincerity. I just think so. He was just a good man, and he was a real man. He was a warrior. He was all the above. And the only closest other one I can think of that really hit me that hard was John Prine, because I'm just a huge John Prine fan.
When Chuck Norris plays dodgeball, the balls dodge him.
When Chuck Norris was in school, his teachers had to raise their hands.
As I said, if you see my videos, you know I do a lot of Chuck Norris facts, one in every video, and I've had a lot of requests over the years to kind of put a bunch of them in one video, put them all in one video. So
if at first you don't succeed, you're not Chuck Norris.
What I thought I would do is a tribute to Chuck Norris, and for appreciation of how much joy he's given me in my life. Today we're going to put a whole bunch of Chuck Norris facts in, and I'm going to intersperse them with some personal details and facts, both about Chuck Norris and also about a couple things in my life that he impacted. One of those actually being my marriage.
Chuck Norris once told a woman to calm down, and she did.
So we're going to get to that in just a minute. But first, for today's words of wisdom from the Bible, I thought it would be appropriate to share one of Chuck Norris's favorite Bible verses. And this is from Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Chuck Norris once won an arm wrestling tournament with both arms tied behind his back. Chuck Norris can kill your imaginary friend. Chuck Norris can tie his shoes with his feet.
Also, speaking of great Americans, got to give a big shout out to my friends at Hog Holsters for sponsoring today's video. I got to tell you, John called me Thursday morning when he heard that Chuck Norris had died, and really gave me his condolences because he knew that I was going to be affected by it. I know, don't ask me why, but I'm actually kind of grieved a little bit, so more than I have for any other celebrity. So anyway, Hog Holsters is the longest running channel sponsor here at Survival on Purpose. They make the concealed carry holster I carry every day, the most comfortable, most concealable holster I ever tried. I got a whole box of holsters that I tried before I found Hog. That box has not grown any since I found Hog. They're 100% made in the USA, individually handcrafted to fit your specific or my specific pistol model. No one size fits all. Made by a United States Marine Corps veteran in Arizona. And Hog Holsters is helping Americans wear guns. They've also got a Hawk sheath program you might want to check out get a really nice sheath for your knife. And if you use the coupon code Survival on Purpose, all one word, you'll be glad you did. So thanks to Hog Holsters for being such a good friend and for being the longest running channel sponsor. Now,
Superman wears Chuck Norris undies. Chuck Norris can make a slinky go upstairs. When ghosts sit around a campfire, they tell Chuck Norris stories.
Off to a rousing start with the Chuck Norris tribute video. So a couple of facts of what I thought we'd do is to intersperse between some of these facts. I'm going to give you some facts about Chuck Norris that maybe you didn't know. You know that Chuck Norris was born in 1940, the same year as my mother, who is also 86 years old right now.
Chuck Norris built the hospital he was born in.
When Chuck Norris was born, the only one that cried was the doctor. Never slapped Chuck Norris.
He was the oldest of three brothers. You probably know about Aaron, his brother, because he worked with him on a lot of movies. But he had a younger brother named Whelan, who was killed in Vietnam at 26 years old.
Chuck Norris walks in other people's sleep. Chuck Norris doesn't sleep. He waits.
You probably know that in 1958, Chuck joined the Air Force and was stationed in South Korea, and he started training in Tang Soo Do, the Korean martial art.
When Chuck Norris turned 18, his parents moved out. When Chuck Norris's parents had nightmares, they come to his bedroom. The boogeyman checks under his bed for Chuck Norris.
And he was discharged in 1962, and while in the process of looking for a job, he started a martial arts studio and started competing in martial arts.
Chuck Norris can remember the future. Legos scream and jump around when Chuck Norris steps on them. The dark is afraid of Chuck Norris.
As I was doing my research, I found out that I was really surprised that Chuck Norris actually didn't win every tournament he was in, at least at first.
When Alexander Graham Bell first invented the telephone, he had 3 missed calls from Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris can win a game of Connect 4 in 3 moves. Chuck Norris can do the Cracker Barrel golf tee game and leave no tees.
But then, of course, he started winning, including the All-American Karate Championship at Madison Square Garden in 1967.
Do you remember that time those 30 men jumped on Chuck Norris and beat him up? Yeah, me either. Chuck Norris has a grizzly bear rug in his house. It's not dead, it's just afraid to move. Chuck Norris doesn't play hide and seek. He plays hide and pray I don't find you.
During the same time period he was in the process of conquering the competitive karate world, he also opened up a series of karate studios and schools.
When Chuck Norris left for college, he looked at his dad and said, "Dad, you're the man of the house now." When Chuck Norris went down to the crossroads, the devil sold his soul. Chuck Norris can do a wheelie on a unicycle.
Some of his more famous students included Steve McQueen, Priscilla Presley, Donnie Marie Osmond, and Bob Barker. Yeah, now I know why he was able to kick Happy Gilmore's butt.
Chuck Norris doesn't say who's your daddy, because he knows the answer. Chuck Norris can cut a knife with hot butter. When Chuck Norris lifts weights, the weights get in shape.
Of course, he then went on to win the Professional Middleweight Karate Championship for 6 straight years, and also retired from the All-American Championship undefeated in 1968.
The flu gets a Chuck Norris shot every year. When police officers approach Chuck Norris, they say, "We have the right to remain silent." Chuck Norris once got pulled over for speeding, but he was in a good mood, so he let the cop off with a warning.
Next, having conquered worldwide tournament karate, Chuck began his conquest of conquering the world of Hollywood. His first role was a small part in The Wrecking Crew, starring Dean Martin.
Chuck Norris can rub 2 pieces of fire together and make wood. Chuck Norris can lift a concrete bench with one hand while he's sitting on it. Chuck Norris can build a Lego Millennium Falcon in 5 minutes out of Lincoln logs.
Then in 1972, he got the role that changed everything. He was Bruce Lee's opponent in The Way of the Dragon, which was originally called The Return of the Dragon in the U.S.
When Chuck Norris crosses the road, cars look both ways. Chuck Norris sleeps with a pillow under his gun. Chuck Norris's trash takes itself out.
His first lead role was in Breaker Breaker in 1977, where he played a truck driver.
Chuck Norris makes onions cry. Chuck Norris can unscramble an egg. When life hands Chuck Norris lemons, he makes chocolate pudding.
Then, in 1978, Chuck made the movie that cemented him as the greatest action hero ever, Good Guys Wear Black.
When Chuck Norris goes to a restaurant, the waiter tips him. Chuck Norris can kill 2 stones with 1 bird.
The only time Chuck Norris was ever wrong was that one time he thought he had made a mistake.
Then, in 1982, Chuck Norris was at least partially responsible for me being married now 43 years to the same woman. He made the movie Silent Rage, which is where I took my girlfriend at the time, my wife now of 43 years, on our first date. And it was a classic Hollywood horror movie, crazy screaming girl and all. But one thing was different. It had Chuck Norris in it. And my wife loved it, and I knew right then she's the right one.
Chuck Norris can start a fire with a fire extinguisher. Chuck Norris doesn't wear a watch. He decides what time it is. Chuck Norris can play the violin with a piano.
Then in 1982, he made Forced Vengeance.
Chuck Norris can blow bubbles with beef jerky. Chuck Norris sweats justice. Chuck Norris knows Victoria's Secret.
And then in 1983, the year before one of the best TV series ever aired, Miami Vice, he finally decided the world was ready for his beard. And he released Lone Wolf McQuade.
Chuck Norris doesn't call the wrong number. You answer the wrong phone. Chuck Norris can strangle you with a cordless phone. Chuck Norris can hear sign language.
That movie became the inspiration for what is unquestionably the greatest television series ever made, Walker, Texas Ranger.
Chuck Norris once won a staring contest with his eyes closed. The Swiss Army uses Chuck Norris knives.
Chuck Norris is the reason Waldo is hiding.
1983, Chuck Norris had his own video game, Chuck Norris Super Kicks.
Chuck Norris once took a lie detector test. The machine confessed to everything. When Chuck Norris was a kid, his friends wrote their name in the snow with P. Chuck wrote his in concrete. Actually, Smokey, only Chuck Norris can prevent forest fires.
I think that's about enough of the filmography. If I tried to list all the movies Chuck made after Lone Wolf McQuade, we'd be here all night. Of course, he went on to make the world's greatest television series ever, Walker, Texas Ranger.
Chuck Norris can pick oranges from an apple tree and make the best darn lemonade you've ever tasted. Chuck Norris can drown a fish. Chuck Norris and the Hulk once arm wrestled. The loser had to paint himself green.
Man, I watched that show, and my kids love that show. It was a great, great show that your whole family could watch, and it's got Chuck Norris, right? So that was great.
Chuck Norris doesn't stub his toe. He accidentally destroys furniture, bed frames, and sidewalks. When Chuck Norris swims in the ocean, the sharks get in a cage. Chuck Norris can speak Braille.
So he went on to make a lot of stuff. But then, in 1991, at the age of 51, having conquered the world of Hollywood and became the absolute best action star ever, he decided to go out and conquer the world of offshore speedboat racing. Like those things go like 140 miles an hour on waves.
Chuck Norris can stand faster than you can run. Chuck Norris can set ants on fire with a magnifying glass at night. Chuck Norris can touch MC Hammer.
And he won the world championship of the offshore powerboat racing in 1991. Just another day for Chuck.
Chuck Norris went to a feminist convention, and the women there ironed his shirts and made him some sandwiches.
If you spell Chuck Norris in Scrabble, you win. Forever.
Chuck Norris can slam revolving doors.
Fast forward to 2001, and Chuck Norris won the Veteran of the Year Award for all the work he did to help veterans organizations and a lot of other philanthropic things. You know, his Kickstart program for kids is still going strong. And in 2001, he published this book, Against All Odds. And that is how I got to shake Chuck Norris's hand. This is an autographed copy that I didn't buy his autographs and they sent it in the mail. Chuck Norris autographed this in front of me with his own hand. And that hand shook this hand.
Chuck Norris's first job was a paper boy. There were no survivors. Simon does what Chuck Norris says. Chuck Norris can hit you so hard, your blood will bleed.
If you haven't read this book, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a great book, and I think Chuck Norris was a really, really good man. I know he was a patriot. I know he was a Christian, and I know he was a family man. Anyway, that's it. We're going to wrap this video up with a few more Chuck Norris facts. It's kind of an encore. As always, thanks so much for watching Survival on Purpose. I really appreciate you tuning in. Remember, survival's not an accident, so be prepared. Take it away, Chuck.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris wears sunglasses to protect the sun.
Chuck Norris did, in fact, build Rome in a day.
Chuck Norris can order a Big Mac from Burger King and get one. Chuck Norris once bowled a perfect game with a marble. Chuck Norris can clap with one hand. When Chuck Norris wants an egg, he just cracks open a chicken. Chuck Norris can dribble a bowling ball. Chuck Norris can build a snowman out of rain. How many push-ups can Chuck Norris do? All of them.